twice as fast as all of us, and he was already older than us, and he would just leap into prostrations doing so many, whereas one had in one's heart the feeling, well, this Lama doesn't need to do these, all these prostrations. We need to do prostrations to purify. So the Lama here doing the prostrations to encourage, to inspire the students. So Lama Tsongkhapa did 3.5 million, it is said. And indeed his prostrating form wore an impression in the floor of the temple. And at the conclusion of the mandala offerings, and the mandala offering part of it is to rub the mandala base with the forearm, his forearm was raw and bleeding because he did 1,800,000 of those. So like that, and he and his disciples engaged in these practices, and then they had various visions of Maitreya and Medicine Buddha and so forth. And perhaps if we were to do 3.5 million prostrations, we'd get some visions. Some visions, who knows what we'd experience if we actually did such kind of practice with faith and did it properly. No doubt it would be having a profound effect on our minds. So here we are. This is the kind of being that he was. Then he was requested by his disciples that there needed to be a proper monastery, a foundation, at one of the conclusion of a great prayer festival. His disciples said that there would be wouldn't be so good if he just continued wandering around Tibet. He was already over 50. So he should stay in one place, establish a seat, establish a place, and remain there. So they offered to build him a monastery wherever he chose. And so he prayed in front of the Shakyamuni Buddha statue in Lhasa, and then the place where he chose totally coincided with what Shakyamuni Buddha had prophesied. To the young, to Anand and others, that this child will, start a monastery in a future life at such and such place. So it coincided with that. Monastery, a mountain near Lhasa. He decided to call the monastery Ganden, in Sanskrit, Tushita, the abode of Maitreya. So Tsongkhapa went to the site with one of his disciples, Gendun Drup, who was later recognized as the first Dalai Lama, and then appointed people to start the construction. So in the following year, the year of the tiger, in 1410, by then it seems like it was complete, and he gave many teachings there. Then from his 57th year onwards, there were signs of increasing ill health, but he continued teaching whenever he could, and engaging in many practices and so forth. Sometimes he got much better after doing some of these practices, but basically it was coming close to the end of his life. But he still gave extensive teachings when he was 61 in 1418. In fact, his teachings and his writings fill, as I said, 18 large volumes. 18 large volumes. Just one more little story, and then we can end. So 4 of his disciples at this time one day witnessed him losing a tooth. So he was getting old, so he lost a tooth. And each of them asked if he might have it. So Tsongkhapa's choice fell on Kedrup Rinpoche, his main disciple, whom he likened to Mount Meru, surrounded by rings of golden mountains. However, the other 3 didn't relent. They also wanted something. So then Tsongkhapa elected to satisfy everyone. He took back the tooth that he'd given to Kedrup Rinpoche, placed it on the altar, and then proceeded to make many offerings, prayers, and so forth. So then the tooth transformed into the youthful Manjushri, from whose forehead came a white relic pill, from whose throat came a red one, and from whose heart a blue relic pill. Relic pills, we don't have any here, but soon you'll be able to see some at the Maitreya projects, and if you go to Kopan Monastery in Nepal, you'll be able to see what are called relics, which emerge from the funeral pyres of highly realized beings. You can see these brilliant, very small often, how would you describe them, like pearl-like, round, often round, but not always exactly round, little pills or eggs, as it said here. So everyone was satisfied because they all got one. So then the manifestation of Manjushri again became the tooth, which Tsongkhapa returned to Kedru Rinpoche. So everyone was satisfied. They all got. So as far as these relics go, I just said that after a Lama dies, or the Buddha's relics and so forth, or great Lamas die, and their relics are enshrined, treated with respect on altars and so forth, then they can actually multiply. Then other relics emerge from those relics. That has been witnessed by friends of mine who were in charge of the Maitreya project relic tours, which have been going on for more than a decade, are ending now. So they actually, some of those pills are relics do manifest more. They multiply. So this is something that people nowadays also observe. It's not just some story from the past. So like that, it was obvious and I guess by now they weren't so astonished when Tsongkhapa did things like this, because he'd already done so many amazing things. And yeah, for us it might be extraordinary if our Lama started doing this, but perhaps we don't have the merit or the ability to experience that. So then he passed away in a very auspicious way, in a sense. His breathing began to cease at a certain point. His body regained the vibrance of a 16-year-old, which is the generally depicted appearance of youthful Manjushri, of whom he was said to be an emanation. And many disciples, it is said, present, witnessed the emission of variegated light rays from his body, which substantiates the belief that Tsongkhapa entered the intermediate state as an enlightened being. So he manifested at least that at the end of his life, attaining Buddhahood, as he entered the in-between state between death and rebirth. And then, of course, many offerings were made. And one of his main disciples, Kedrubje, received 5 visions of Lama Tsongkhapa at various points when he, coming at a time which were very special for Kedrub Rinpoche, sometimes when he was very downhearted or having problems understanding teachings or having certain doubts, and Tsongkhapa appeared to him in 5 different ways. There were 5 different visions for Kedrubje. So Tsongkhapa, who was only 62 when he passed away, taught and achieved so much. And this is especially true considering the much longer lifespans of Asanga and Nagarjuna. According to the Tibetans, lived 150 years and 600 years, respectively. By the way, this is not just something that Tibetans talk about. In the Taoist teachings, it said that certain yogis, sages, due to their practices, can live well over 200 years, some of them are said to have lived. So it's not just something that Tibetans make up, or, it is there that certain beings who have achieved certain realizations, they can live very long lives. Of course, when we hear 600, we begin to say, wow, what's happening here? And I don't think you'd have any Western scholar putting that in their thesis as a fact, but who knows? What do we know? What do we know really? We don't even, I can't remember breakfast 10 days ago, so what do I know about these kind of things? We just don't have the mind that can appreciate this yet. At least my mind can't fully appreciate this yet, but 600 years maybe possible. Anyway, Tsongkhapa lived much, only 62 years apparently, but achieved so much. So how amazing, how kind. And many of his disciples then became famous and benefited sentient beings. So the monasteries of Drepung, Sera, Ganden, all in Drepung and Sera, the other great Gelugpa monasteries, all started by Tsongkhapa's disciples. Furthermore, the first Dalai Lama founded Tashi Lumpo Monastery at Shigatse, which is about halfway between Lhasa and the Nepali border, and so forth. Yeah. So it's said here in this biography that it's generally accepted that the three greatest contributors are, in the annals of Tibet, are Guru Padmasambhava, Atisha, and Tsongkhapa. So all of whom appeared when great teachers were needed. Yeah. It was the 37th Tibetan king who invited Shantarakshita, and who couldn't fully, bring the Tibetan the teachings to Tibet due to many interfering forces. So then it was Guru Rinpoche, Padmasambhava, who came and eliminated those hindrances. Yeah. Then later, when there was already some degeneration in Buddhism in Tibet, the great Atisha went to Tibet in the 11th century, and who was able to find compatibility between the Sutra and Tantra teachings, He dispelled many wrong views, started the Kadampa tradition, very pure Kadampa tradition. And then later, it is said, when people couldn't see how learning and study, the way of the Pandit, could be synthesized with the yogic practice and tantric practice, when people were having difficulty putting those two together, synthesize them in practice, then Tsongkhapa came and taught exactly that, how to be a great Pandit, great scholar, as well as great practitioner and yogi. So he helped people to bring those kind of paths together in his teachings. So the Lama, and this commentary, this teaching was given by Geshe Dargye, a very great teacher who was in Dharamsala in the early years, teaching at the library, sort of being taught in the early 70s. Once, I think, I had the occasion to hear him. Anyway, he then says at the end of this short biography that today we should strive to emulate Tsongkhapa's peerless progress along the path, to hear as many teachings as possible, never to be satisfied with less than ultimate knowledge as the most important lessons that can be applied in life. It's imperative to appreciate and work towards the peerless goal of wishing to achieve enlightenment in order to help every other sentient being do exactly the same. So J. Rinpoche, Tsongkhapa's example of scriptural learning and meditative application, taken as a unified path, show the essence of Buddha's intent and the truly quick method of achieving enlightenment. So that was a short introduction to the life of this great being. There's so many other stories. It said that there was a tree that grew, I think, very close to where Lama Tsongkhapa was born. And then that tree the leaves had different syllables, Tibetan syllables on the leaves. And that was actually witnessed by a Western traveler, can't remember the name, some Western traveler to Tibet in the 16th, 17th or 18th century, perhaps something like that. He also witnessed this, and I couldn't explain it. And he said it was obvious that these leaves were not tampered with. It wasn't, carved on or something later, but these syllables were naturally appearing on these leaves. I think possibly connected where the placenta from the mother after his birth was put in the ground, something like that, but connected with Tsongkhapa and his birth, very near to his birthplace, perhaps even within the compound of his parents' house, something like that. So this amazing tree with mantric syllables in Tibetan, I think, or Sanskrit, on the leaves. Amazing. Anyway, who knows? Who knows? But we're very fortunate. Our teachers always remind us of how fortunate we are. Of course, one shouldn't get dogmatic about this and say, well, Tsongkhapa is the greatest, isn't he? And everyone should come and listen to Tsongkhapa. That would be like saying, upma or dosa is the best and everyone should just eat that because it suits me. So all you paratha khane wale Punjabi log should leave all that nonsense and come and eat what I'm eating. That would be wrong. There were other great manifestations of Manjushri and other great beings like Longchenpa and other great, so many lamas, Sakya Pandita, and they each benefit different kind of mentalities and beings in their own way. So we cannot say Tsongkhapa is the best for everyone. We really cannot say that, because not everyone is suited to his means of teaching and that very often very rigorous intellectual approach. It's not everyone will karmically benefit from that, because they have other connections and other kind of mind stream. But it seems clear that because of the praise heaped on Tsongkhapa, not just by his own disciples, but by other masters, it's very clear that he was regarded as an extraordinary teacher whose teachings were just really amazing. For example, there's the eighth Karmapa. The eighth Karmapa wrote something called Incomparable Tsongkhapa. So one could just briefly, why does the eighth Karmapa regard Tsongkhapa as so great? Let's see what he has to say. And eighth Karmapa himself, obviously, also an enlightened being. Gyalwan Mikyo Dorje, the eighth Karmapa, who lived from 1507 to 1554. Why does he praise Tsongkhapa? So just a few verses from this. He says, at a time when nearly everyone in this northern land, Tibet, were living in utter contradiction to Dharma, without illusion, O Tsongkhapa, you polished the teachings. Hence I sing this praise to you of Ganden Mountain. When the teachings of the Sakya, Kagyu, Kadam and Nyingma sects in Tibet were declining, you, O Tsongkhapa, revived Buddha's doctrine. Hence I sing this praise to you of Ganden Mountain. Manjushri, Bodhisattva of wisdom, gave to you special instructions on the thought of Nagarjuna. O Tsongkhapa, upholder of the middle way, I sing this praise to you of Ganden Mountain. Yeah. Mind and form are not empty of their own natures, but are empty of truly existent mind and form. You, O Tsongkhapa, Tibet's chief exponent of voidness. Hence I sing this praise to you of Ganden Mountain. I mean, this is not empty praise, right? I mean, this is the eighth Karmapa, who is himself reckoned to be, Avalokiteshvara, a Buddha. He's saying that you are Tibet's chief exponent of emptiness. That's why I'm praising you. He praises how he developed so many disciples and reinvigorated the teachings and the practitioners. In merely a few years, you filled the land from China to India with peerless holders of the saffron robes. Hence I sing this praise to you. And so forth. And then, in order to civilize men and spirits, you spread your teachings through Kham, Mongolia, and Turkestan. O Tsongkhapa, subduer of savages, I sing this praise to you. Undoubtedly, they consider many of us as savages. So, Tsongkhapa's teachings are subduing the savage Westerners, savage Americans and Britishers and so forth, who are basically, in terms of the Indian way of looking at the world, this is the center, right? India is the center where the Dharma is, and everyone else are so far away, total barbarians. If you're as far away as America, you're a barbarian. Kind of thing. Yeah. So, having exposed false teachings, transgressing the excellent ways well shown by Buddha, you firmly establish your bold doctrine. Hence I sing this praise. Yeah. So by the strength of the children of your lineage, and by my having faithfully offered this praise, may the enlightened activity of Buddha Shakyamuni pervade the earth for ages to come. And the colophon, once when Gyalwa Mikyo Dorje, the eighth Karmapa, was traveling through the Charida Pass, I don't know where that is, thoughts of the incomparable Tsongkhapa welled up within him. Overcome by profound faith, he was moved to compose the above poem. So, it would have been 18,000 feet up there. Many of us would be gasping for breath, but it inspired the eighth Karmapa to compose a poem about Tsongkhapa. Very nice. I like that It's not like just Gelugpa Lama is praising him, but Kagyu Lama is praising him. The great being is praising him. So anyway, our teachers are always reminding us of how fortunate we are to be able to not only have the texts, and translated into languages we understand, but to have lamas still there, like His Holiness and others, who can actually teach them very skillfully, profoundly, deeply. It's very unusual to give transmissions, to give commentaries. And then great lamas who have, I guess, a bit more time in one way than His Holiness, has so many other commitments. So great lamas like our own Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, then gives leads retreats based on Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings, extensive retreats. Recently concluded a retreat in Mexico, which went very well, I heard, and must have benefited so many people. So giving teachings on these texts of Lama Tsongkhapa as the basis. So on that basis, people receive teachings from great lamas, like our gurus, and then some, even if the person doesn't become totally inspired or a great practitioner, still many, that one would say, positive imprints are laid on the mind stream, so that in the future that will benefit that person. But also many people get tremendous inspiration right now, and some are moved to practice. And it's of course we can't tell what the realizations are, what the level of mind is of our companions on the path, but for sure many of the students who've been practicing the teachings for many years now, many of them are doing retreats, and no doubt many of them have benefited so much. And Rinpoche is emphasizing this. There need to be more people doing retreat so that people can realize what Lama Tsongkhapa taught. They can become deep realization, transforming their lives, taking them closer to Buddhahood, and helping others get closer to Buddhahood.